In this video, we're going to show you the basic disassembly and reassembly of the U.S. Army Carver 1. We're also going to show you some parts identification and some basic maintenance. We're first going to start off by removing our barrel. And then from there, what we're going to do is remove our bolt handle cap. And then with your 5/64 Allen wrench, you're going to remove your left grip half. Once you have that removed, we're going to use our 1/8 Allen wrench to remove our tank adapter bolt and our receiver bolts. From there, you should be able to pull your receiver off. And you want to make sure that you have all your bolts loosened up. So we're going to go ahead and remove our receiver half. Set that off to the side there. And as you can see, an O-ring fell out here. This is actually for your barrel. Kind of holds it nice and snug in the front part of that shroud area. And one thing that we're missing here is our safety and one of our receiver pins here. We'll go ahead and put those back in place. Now just for some of the basic parts identification, you have your front bolt, your ball latch. The ball latch just holds one ball in the breech at a time, so you're not shooting or loading multiple paintballs in there at one time. You have your linkage arm, your power tube, and your valve assembly, which is inside the power tube. You also have your velocity screw, which is accessible from the outside of the receiver. You also have your trigger spring, your safety, the trigger itself. You have 4 receiver pins that are silver, 2 that are for the trigger. And then you have one that the sear goes in the middle of these 2 right here. And then you also have a steel hardened sear pin, which is black. You always want to make sure that you get the black sear pin in the correct place. If you were to put any of the silver sear pins or receiver pins in this particular spot, you could run the risk of these pins breaking. So you always want to make sure that you have that in the correct spot. You have your sear, which sits on top of that pin, your sear spring. You also have your rear bolt, the big silver piece, and then you have your cocking handle. And then if we pull this rear bolt back slightly, you'll see the rear bolt O-ring exposed. You also have your ACT pins, which help guide that linkage arm straight. We have your end cap here. We'll just kind of pop this out. And then you also have an O-ring that kind of free floats back here. This O-ring is your buffer O-ring. It's a gray O-ring, just kind of free floats in the back there. That absorbs the recoil of the marker every time you fire. We also have the drive spring and the guide pin. That pin just helps to guide the spring straight into the back end of the rear bolt. So you always want to make sure you have that in there. And then from there, you have your end cap. You always want to make sure that your drive spring and your guide pin is always in the center hole of your end cap there. And then there's also a little notch at the top of the cap that drops into the groove of the receiver, just to make sure you have everything lined up correctly. And then from there, you have your tank adapter nut and your tank adapter bolt. And that's pretty much it for the parts identification. You also have some lubrication points here on this marker. I usually like to go through, make sure the marker's clean and well lubricated. You always want to make sure that your front bolt area is all free and clear of any kind of paint or dirt, debris, anything like that. Same thing with the rear bolt section and your drive spring and guide pin area. So you always want to make sure that that's nice and clean and clear of any kind of dirt, debris, paint, anything. So after you're done wiping down the parts, making sure all those areas are clean, usually like to go through and add a couple drops of oil to the linkage arm slot here. And then I also like to add a little bit of oil to the rear bolt O-ring, and then a couple drops right here on the drive spring and guide pin itself. Once you're done with that, you can go ahead and reassemble your marker. We'll go ahead and grab our receiver. Go ahead and drop that back into place there. And then from there you can go ahead and tighten down all your receiver bolts. And you don't want to put them too tight. You just want to get them snug. And from there you can go ahead and put your grip back on. Once again, you don't want to get your grip screws too tight, or you can actually pull the screw right through the rubber grip, so you don't want to get those too tight. And we'll go ahead and tighten up our tank adapter. And we'll go ahead and reinstall our barrel. Make sure that's nice and tight. And that's the basic disassembly, reassembly of your U.S. Army Carver 1.